Kadosh, good morning. We're going to speak about a very interesting topic and something that I'm sure a lot of you will like, which is a question of the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. In this week's Parasha, Parashat Terumah, the Torah writes about the 13 different items which are required for the donations towards the Mishkan. And it starts speaking about whether it's Zahav, Kesef, Nechoshet, gold, silver, copper, Tchelet Vargaman, Tolat Shani, many different types of, whether it's skins or leathers and all these things. And finally, at the end, right, when it's even talking about Shemen Lamor, oil and everything, at the end it says, Avne Shoam ve'avne miluim. We need special stones, different types of jewels and gems. And where do you use them for? For the ephod and the choshen, for the breastplate and for the ephod. This is what we use them for, where we have that the Kohen Gadol would come and he would have a beautiful settings with the names of the tribes. Okay, beautiful. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh comes and he asks the following question. He says, shouldn't it have been the opposite? If I'm right now going to come and I'm going to ask for a donation, this is if you want, in marketing, or also even in donations. Somebody just taught me this. I went and I didn't know, but he went and he taught it to me. He goes, Rabbi, you have different aliyot in the parasha. Make sure that the Shelishi, the Kohen and Levi, usually you don't have a choice. So, okay, the Kohen Levi, you give them the aliyah, that's it. But Shelishi, make sure if you're going to give a Shelishi the aliyah, make sure you give it to someone that he's going to start off with the biggest amount. Meaning, if you have in your mind, I've got 4 aliyot, Shlishi, Revi'i, Chamishi, Shishi, let's say even Shvi, or maybe there's Nachalot, and I'm going to have in my, I'm going to give to these 4 people. The first aliyah that you're going to give, the Shlishi, make sure you give it to the guy that's going to go donate most. I told the guy, why? He says, you know why? Because he's setting the stone. He's setting the first place. Once he gives that, so then the other ones, they will also feel compelled, or they will feel, I'm going to give much less. So then they'll also give more. But imagine right now you get a shlishi, right? And you get up there and he comes and he gives you $26. So now the Revi, even if he gives 52, he feels that he's a biggest tzaddik already. The other guy gave 26, I gave 52. But really, Bemet, he could have given them thousands. So what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to do it that way. You first start off with the highest amount and then you continue. So when I told him, wow, I never even knew such a thing, but okay, very interesting. But the truth is, this is the Or HaChaim HaKadosh's question in this week's Parasha. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh comes and he says, 1 second, Mina Rahui was fitting that if you're going to count and you're going to tell me what are the most precious things that you need in the Mishkan, you're going to tell me the Avnei Choshen, the Avnei Miluim, the stones, the precious stones. And the truth is, you see it in everything. When you go and they're making a campaign, to do a building campaign, what do you start off with? Right? You have the building or the name. $2 million, $5 million, whatever it is. Then it's a 1 million. Then the name of the Bet HaMikdash. Then the this. Then that. By the time until the bottom of the list, then at the bottom of the list, you have the least of the amount of what it is in value. So you want to give $1,800 or I don't know what, you'll get a mezuzah. You understand? But if you're good, you got 10,000. Maybe it's going to be the stender of the rabbi, right? Or the bima will be 50,000, and the echad will be 75,000, and you continue going. You understand? So what happens? You always start with the highest amount. So the question that we ask ourselves is, why is it that for the Mishkan, okay, fine, it's true, it did start with gold, silver, and copper, but then it went to other things, and only the last things were the most precious gems and this jewels. They should have been the first thing. And then the gold, silver, and copper, and then finally until the oil and all those other things. But it's out of order. So says, what's the proof? Says Or HaChaim HaKadosh, Gemara Masechet Kiddushin, Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph says, that Dama ben Netinah, remember that Dama ben Netinah was the goy that we learned from him how to do kibud avaim, right? That even though he went and he had the key to the safe underneath his father's pillow, he lost the business deal and he didn't go and wake up his father. And from there we learned in the Gemara what it is kibud avaim, respecting our fathers, our parents. But here, for the stones of the Avnei Miluim, he got 6, 7, 800,000 coins, golden coins. So we're not talking about a small amount over here. We're talking about a huge amount. So this is the question. Everyone understood the question, yeah? Very simple question. Why is it that we started with gold, silver, right, and copper, and then we went downwards? And all of a sudden, the last items which are on the list is the most expensive. First, tell me the most expensive items, and then you go down according to the order of the value. Why is it that they're the last ones? So the Or HaChaim HaKadosh answers something incredible. And listen to this. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh says, the Gemara in Yomah, Ayin Hei Amud Aleph says, that the Ananim, the clouds of glory, were the ones that brought the Avnei Shoam. What does that mean? Right? We didn't have precious jewels and stones in the desert. How are they going to get it? So he says what happened is that the Nisim, the princes of the tribes, they were so special to Am Yisrael that they came with them when the man was coming down. They sent down these precious jewels and stones that they got to their entrances. And therefore, what happened is that they didn't actually work on it. They didn't actually come to work. They didn't come to do anything for it. So the fact that they were lacking their work and their toil, their input in that which they do, even though the realistic value was the highest value in everything, but in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, something that's missing, our input, our enthusiasm, our work, our toil into it, it doesn't have such a big value. And therefore, that's why it's at the end of the list. That's what the Or HaChaim HaKadosh comes and he answers. So the Chaim Shmulevitz comes and he explains. In Sichot Musar, you see from here that the Yikar, the main concept of Parashat Terumah, which is the Parasha of the donations towards the Mishkan, was Nidvat Halev, that you're giving from your heart. Because when you give from your heart, that's more important than anything else. Shneimar, me'et kol ish asher yidevenu libo, from every single person which its heart desires. Sheiten kol echad mitok nidut, you have to give it from your heart. V'nidvat halev, and the giving from your heart depends upon how much you're going to come and you're going to put your toil and everything that you have in there. As the Gemara B'Metzia says, Rotze adam bekav shelo, yoter mitisha kavin shel chavero. A person wants more from his own work, more than 9 from his friend's work. Which means, imagine you went out to the field and you started working hard. And you went and you were able to get a big basket of fruits. And you have a nice basket of fruits, but you picked out the fruits and you worked hard and you wanted the best fruit and you put it inside. And all of a sudden I come to you and I say, you know what? Here, I've got 9 baskets to give you. Which one would you prefer? The 9 baskets that I'm going to give you, or the 1 basket that you worked hard for and you were able to toil and you got for yourself? The Gemara says, Rotze adam bekav shelo, yoter mitisha kabin shel chavero. A person would prefer his own, even though it's small and minute, it's only one kav, 1 basket. He prefers that than having 9 baskets coming from his friend. Just like Rashi there says, Chaviva alav al yedeh she'amal bahen. It's precious to you because you worked on it. And when you work on something, it becomes yours. This is your baby. This becomes yours. And that's why it's so precious. And therefore it says, Amafkiv perot etzel chavero, afilu en avudin lo yiga bahen. So to imagine right now, you're going to give some fruits to your friend to watch over them. And all of a sudden, right, they could get ruined. They're going to get rotten. Should you come quickly, sell it, and then get the money at least? One of the halachot there says you're not allowed to. Why? Because at the end of the day, they were yours. They were the guys. He's not going to want that you're going to come and start selling his property. But it's going to get, but this is something that you worked on. It's something yours. Do you know something very interesting? I heard this actually from this exact same Yesod. We just had Rav David Yosef here. So I was speaking to his son, Rav Ovadia Yosef, the son of Rav David Yosef. This is the grandson of, Rav Ovadia is the grandson of Rav Ovadia Yosef. So I was speaking to him and I went and I told him, here, I'm giving you a donation from the Bet Knesset towards the Kolel. Here it is. And I told him, we usually don't do it, right? And halvai that we could have given him much more, but here it is. And we gave him a donation. He went and he told me, you should know one thing. He says, if you're giving it and you're giving it from your heart, and that's the shiur, so that's the most important. He says, why? He says, I could go right now to a certain balabait, and he's going to give me $100,000. He says, don't think that $100,000 is not important. We need the money. They go on a budget, I think it's $2 million a month or something. They're talking about it's a big budget. But he said, but I'm going to tell you something. This guy that he gave me $100,000, he probably could have given me $1 million. and he wouldn't have felt it as well. It would have been the exact same, 100,000 or a million. But what? He just gave me the donation. Chazak u'baruch. Very good. But he says, but I have a person in your community that he gives me $36 every single month. $36 he gives me every single month. He says, but he gives it from his heart because he can't give anymore. He says, that money to me is worth much more than $100,000. He says, why? Don't think that I don't need, I'll need those $100,000 as well. But the $36 came from his heart. It came from everything that he has because he truly wants to help. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends a certain beracha in that, which some people don't always get. And that's actually the concept of tikhu et terumati. In the beginning of the Parasha, it says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and he says, you guys are going to take from me the terumah, the donations. And then he says, you're going to take my terumah, my donation. Everyone asks, it's Hashem's donation. It's our donation. I'm the one that's giving the donation, not Hashem. So what does it say? Tikhu et terumati, you're taking my donation. Says Chachamim, listen to this, something beautiful. He says, when Hashem comes and he sees that you want to give with your true heart, he says, even though you weren't able to give that much, only because you weren't able to. Physically, you didn't have the possibility. But you really wanted to, and if you had the possibility to give more, you would have given more. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives a special bracha in that money, and therefore what happens? It becomes trumati. It becomes my donation. Because Hashem's the one that puts the bracha into that donation. So it's something actually incredible, because that means that Hashem is actually putting the bracha in our donations because we weren't able to give more. But as long as we have our hearts there, our heart is there. Now, why is it so important, Be'emet? Why is it so important, that which we said over here? Why is it so important, that which we said, the entire concept, that it's everything that we are toiling over, that's the most important? Why? So this is a famous Rav Dessler that we mentioned in the past. Rav Dessler in Michtav Meliyahu Chelik Gimel, page 13, he comes and he says as follows. Imagine a person comes and they start working for something, and they start toiling over something. He says what happens is it becomes an attachment. He becomes connected. There's a bond between what he did. And what happens is that he has a certain love for it. So we see that if a person comes and he wants to start planting a tree, he becomes connected to the tree. The tree is so much into it, right? Why? Because when he comes and he puts all his effort into it, it becomes a part of him. And therefore, it's something completely different. He sees, whether it's that the tree is that this is me. I'm part of that tree. There's something there. So he comes and he says it's so important that he wants to make it beautiful. And he wants to see how much it is. Do you know, the message that we were mentioning is that a person becomes attached. It could be to a dog. It could be to an animal. And the attachment becomes so strong that this is a part of them, which means that they cannot become detached, and they feel so much. Mamash, I thought that the guys, I don't know what, passed away. You understand? It was the dog, but they become so attached to the dog. They become so attached to whatever it is that they have around them that all of a sudden something different, something changes. You understand? And that's what happens. Nowadays, we are in a very recycled society, right? Disposable society. Everything's disposable. So, for example, even a car, you don't get it. You lease after 3 years, boom, you sit in the back. But imagine right now you took a car and you had it for 15 years, right? Or 20 years. You went and you took this car to this simcha and to the other simcha and to this thing and to good things and, bar minan and also other things. And, you become attached. So then, and then the same thing happens. Usually houses, but even houses nowadays become. So what happens? When you have an attachment to something, there's something there. There's a bond. There's something there. So says the Michtav Meliyahu Rav Dessler, since when you gave so much, you put so much into something, you become attached. So then what happens is that now becomes you. You're giving from yourself. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted for you to give from yourself and not just to give something, even though it has a much higher quality or quantity, right, in value. He wants you to give something that's most precious to you, not something else. The Sichot Musar, right, he comes and he brings down also the Orchot Tzadikim in Shara Ava, Haderech la'asot oavo shel chavero sheyitev imo ben bigufo ben b'mimono. If you want to like somebody, how do you do it? Start doing them favors. Start giving them things. Start becoming attached to them. Make sure that you give. When you start giving, you become attached and then you love them. It becomes you befriend them. And that's what we're supposed to do. Because only by doing so, right, we're able to do that. Until where do we see the love and the attachment? Says Rav Desser, you see it in the Torah. The Torah says, who's the one that built the house and he didn't do Chanukat Bayit? Or he went and he planted a vineyard and he didn't benefit from it. Or he got engaged to a woman, which was the initial, the engagement, and he didn't get married to her. In all these cases, he goes back from the war. Why does he go back from the war? He says, you know why? Because there's so much of the love that he became attached. Because you give so much, how could it be that you didn't even benefit from it? Imagine right now, you know what it is to build the house? The building of the house, especially here, if you would talk about, in different parts of Miami, that they're so meticulous. Every single thing has to go through a board and through a this and through a that. You get tired of it afterwards, but you come and you've worked 2 years until finally they come and they put you up a big palace. You became attached. Every single little detail about this and about that. Once you become attached to it, it's very difficult to come and just sell it like that or to get rid of it so easily. So a person would want to benefit from it. He would want to stay there a little bit. So the Torah, knowing the human nature, says, go back from the war. Go back, enjoy, and then you could come. But if you didn't enjoy it at all, you didn't get married, right? You didn't use the vineyard, you didn't use the house, go back, then you could come to the war. You're not going to do it beforehand because of the attachment that you have with it. Do you know that it actually happened? Says Rav Desser, something incredible. It happened that Bar Minan, right? Nobody should be in the situation during World War II. They were separated, right? A couple with their son. And what happened is that the father and the son, they became separated from the mother. And the father had to basically bring up the child for many, many years. It was a good 5-6 years, but they went through, you know what it was, right? So we should never know. But just hearing a little bit of the stories, they went through Ginam, hell on earth. And it was terrible, the things they went through. So they became very, very much attached. Finally, after many years, they became reunited with the mother. They found out that she was alive and they became reunited. She couldn't stand it. She felt like an outsider because the bond that was between the father and the son became so strong that now all of a sudden it was like she was a stranger. Like she didn't even know them. It was something completely, but why? It wasn't something that they wanted. It was something natural. Because since the father and the son, they bonded for so much time, for so many years, and the mother was away. Obviously, it was, force majeure. It wasn't she decided it. It was because of the war that it just happened that they became split up. But that in itself, because the love that was there was so strong, that the bond between the father and the son, which is usually not as natural. Usually it's between the father and a mother and a son, much more, right? The children with their mother is much more than with the father. Usually the father is much more, work, this, that. Who's the one that drives them? The carpool, brings them home, goes to PTA, goes to this, does that, makes the lunches, does. The mother is the one that's much more involved in everything to do with the upbringing of the children. But here it was the exact opposite. And it was very difficult for her because there wasn't the same bond anymore. So Kam Chachamim, they say, this amelut, this is what a person is coming and he's investing, is actually what we learn in Bikurim. We know in Parashat Tavo, there's a mitzvah. The first of your fruit, you have to bring to Hashem. And the question is why? Why is there such a mitzvah of Bikurim? And the Torah says very, very simple. Is because when a person is going to come and they're going to invest and their first fruit come out, they're so excited. They just worked on something and finally the first ones, that's the most that's precious to you. And therefore the Torah says specifically that's most precious. That's what I want. I want your heart. I want all the, afterwards it becomes a cycle. It's very simple. It just becomes robots. But the first one that you did, this is my first. This is the first thing that I have. And therefore all of a sudden it's a completely different ballgame. So therefore the entire mitzvah of the Bikurim was specifically, right, purposely for this point that Hashem wants your heart. Rachamana libabai. He doesn't want the value because it's not the value in money which makes the true value. The value many times could be sentimental, but it could be also from emotionally, how much you're attached to it. Do you know that when the women came and they gave their donations, you know what the women gave their donations? Marot Tzoveot. What were the Marot Tzoveot? Marot Tzoveot was the mirrors that they used to look in the mirror. At the beginning, Moshe Rabbeinu took these mirrors and he said, I don't want them. He says, what women are using to beautify themselves, and it could be for whether it's Averot or for whatever it is. This is something so physical. I'm going to come and use it in the Mishkan. Like, it doesn't make sense. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, take it, and that's the most precious for me. And everyone asks, why is it so precious? So there's actually two things, and they're both true. Do you know that there's a concept to do with a question, right? So the women in Egypt, what they did is that they beautified themselves in these mirrors for their husbands in order to arouse them, and then they had children. They were able to procreate. So therefore, what happened is that Kadosh Baruch Hu says, do you think that the women use these mirrors for something physical? These women were the Nashim Tzadkaniyot, the women that they were righteous, that in their merit we were able to be redeemed from Egypt because they took these mirrors and they took something physical and they made it spiritual. They made it in order to have children, to have legions, and to continue going, that the Jewish nation should continue going. That is the most precious for me. However, though, there's something also a little bit deeper. The most precious to a woman is a mirror. Ask any woman, right? How many mirrors does she have in her bedroom, in her bathroom? If you're going to have a woman that she doesn't have a mirror in her bedroom or in her bathroom, right? That's not a bathroom or a bedroom, right? That's the first thing that she needs. And she doesn't just need a regular mirror. She said, don't give her one of these, handheld mirrors. She needs the entire wall so she could see herself from top to bottom. Yeah, from the beginning to everything. Yeah, she has to see everything in one shot. It can't be like that. Why? The mirror, you have to see how you look, right? So therefore, Kam Chachamim, they say, the most precious thing for a woman is her mirror. If they're giving their mirrors to the Mishkan, that's the most precious for me. Because they're giving the most precious jewel that they have. They're giving me the most precious thing that they have, because that's what makes them. That's what a part of them. They can't go anywhere without a mirror. It's the biggest punishment if you're going to come and you're going to give a woman a room without a mirror. Oh, what's she going to be doing? She's going to have to start doing the phone, and she's going to have to start looking up and down. It doesn't work. You understand? It just doesn't work. So what happens? Kal Chachamim, they say, we want the most precious thing. Hashem wants your heart. That's what he wants. The Marot Tzoveot. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually wants from the people. Do you know the Imre Shefer, he brings down a beautiful story from the Shemot Rabbah. And he says like this, Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta, right? What happened is that on Erev Shabbat, he didn't have any food. So he went outside of the city and he started praying. He says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he needs Parnasah. So what happened? They gave him a beautiful jewel from the Shemaim. So he gave it to the person to evaluate it, one of these pawn shops, and he got the money. So the wife says, hey, where did you get the money from? He says, what? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to me. He said, what are you talking about? If you don't tell me what's going on, I don't eat anything. Yeah, ta'anit, until you don't explain to me what happened. So the husband has no choice. You understand? If people are left hungry, it's the biggest, that's the biggest crime, right? People, they get moody. What do you think? It's normal. It's natural. Yeah, so what happens? So he says what happened is that all of a sudden he told her what happened. She went and he said, what? They gave you from the... No, I'm going to eat on one condition. Motzei Shabbat, you give it back. He says, what are you talking about? No, give it back. He says, why? He says, what? Do you want that your table in Olam Haba is going to be lacking and everyone else's table in Olam Haba is going to be full? So he says, okay. So he went to his rabbi. He says, Rabbi, I have Shalom Bayit issues. So Rabbi says, what's the problem? He tells her the story. So he comes and he says, don't worry about it. You know what? Tell her to come to me. So what? She comes. What's it? He goes, listen, you know what? Don't worry about it. Why? If your table's lacking, I'll fill it up. Now this is Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Yeah, this is Rebbe. Rabbeinu HaKadosh, he was the biggest Gadol Ador. So she comes and she asks Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rebbe, can you see your friend in Olam Haba? Right? Every single tzaddik, they can't see each other in Olam Haba. But it says in a pasuk Ki olecha adam el bet olamo. A person is going to his world. It doesn't say olamim, it says olamo. So therefore, what happened? He went and he said, you know what? You're right. And he said, listen to your wife. So the woman actually won. She went, she told the rabbi, and she won with her logic. She won. And the rabbi said, okay, fine, give it back. 100%. The Baalei Musar asked, 1 second, what was stopping this woman? At the end of the day, Rabbeinu HaKadosh comes and he says, if you're lacking something, I'm going to make it up. I'm going to give it to them. So that's not a good enough haftacha. Nowadays, all you need is a rabbi to give you a big beracha, and that's it. You're going to get the blessing from the big rabbi. Ooh, that's it. Here, the rabbi is coming. He's giving him a guarantee. Don't worry about it. You're missing. I'm going to make it up. Why wasn't it good enough? And the answer is there really something that was much deeper than that? You know what it was? Listen to this. He says, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, he says, for sure he could be mashlim. Why could he be mashlim? For sure he could come and he could make up for the lack, right, of the table. He says, but it's not making up in the quantity. It's in the quality. This is why. He says, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, his house was full of gold, silver, money. He had everything. Rabbeinu HaKadosh had everything in this world. That's why the Gemara actually says that not everyone is zocheh. Not everyone merits to 2 different tables. But Rabbeinu HaKadosh had everything. He was with Antoninus. He had everything that he needed. He says, so his learning, even though he was always learning Torah and he was a Gadol Ador, but his learning was tranquility, with peace. He wasn't learning, right, like Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta. This woman's husband, he was learning with poverty. He was learning through poverty. He was the poorest person. He was still learning and learning and learning. That's what happened. Which means that the Torah of Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta, since he was learning from so much poverty, even if it could be that it's not in quantity, in quality, the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's giving his entire heart. He's giving everything that he can. In that's what the woman was coming and telling Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. She comes and she says, what, you could make it up so easily? In quantity, yes. In quality, can you make it up? You're learning Torah with menuchat nefesh. You've got your parnasah in your pocket. So when you're learning Torah, kol hakavod, it's good. But 1 second, are you learning like my husband is learning? From poverty that he's nothing in his bed, nothing, and he's still learning the Torah because he's giving his heart to Hashem? That was not the same. And that's why he actually came and he said, so you see from here that the ma'aseh, the action that it is, it's not, the action itself is not kovea, the mishkala mitzvah does not fix what is the value of the mitzvah, but rather the accompanying of the mitzvah is what gives you the value of the mitzvah. Meaning the value of the mitzvah is not the action that you did. It's how you did it, what you did, with everything which is surrounding. Because the action in itself, I could do the same exact action as you do it. But maybe for me, it might be worth much less than for you. Because if you gave your entire heart and it was much more difficult for you to do it, all of a sudden that mitzvah is up here. Maybe for me, it was very easy to do the mitzvah. So therefore it's much less. Or if I didn't put all my oomph and all my enthusiasm and everything that I have into it, so all of a sudden, it doesn't have the same. Why? Because the value of the mitzvah is not the actual mitzvah. It's everything, all the details which accompany the mitzvah. They also have a very great input in the actual mitzvah. This chidush, right, we actually see also, right, where there was in the Sichot Musar learns it from Avraham Avinu. The Gemara in Masechah B'Metzia Pevav Umbet says, in the merit of Chema v'Chalav that Avraham Avinu, in the merit of the butter and the milk that Avraham Avinu came and he gave to the orchim, to the guests, he said, what happened? It says over here, Zachu banav laman 40 shana. They had the manna, the food, right, for 40 years. Yeah, so what happens? It says, 1 second, right, mayim lo reach. It says what? Everybody gives food and water to guests. Avraham Avinu was the only one that comes and gives food and water to guests. Ela evdel gadol, he says, there's a big difference, right, in something that you're giving, and that's it. He says Avraham Avinu alav shalom used to give his entire neshama with it. It wasn't just stam that he was giving to the guest. He was giving his entire neshama to the guest. And this, by the way, you should know, we have to actually start training ourselves. Why? Because this applies not only to guests, this applies to everything in life. For example, right, there was a famous story with a man and a woman, right? A couple. They wanted to start going out, and then there was shalom bayit issues. What happens? The man came and he said, I don't understand. I went and I gave, right, this woman the most precious thing that I have. I went, you know what I gave her? I gave her my baseball uniform that I bought, and I got it signed from some, I don't know, whatever his name is. And it's worth, I don't know what. And you know what that is? I gave her that. And she comes and she says, you know what I got for my husband? I got him some bouquet of flowers of something incredible and this and that. And they don't meet eye to eye. Saying, well, we give to each other the best, and what's going on? And the problem, what they were missing is that even though they were giving something which was precious to them, they didn't give their neshama to the other person. Why? Because when you want to give the neshama to the other person, you have to go deep into their neshama. You have to go in their shoes. Do you know, in last week's Parasha, right, it was Parashat Mishpatim. And in last week's Parasha, it was very interesting because it speaks about interpersonal relationships between us and our friends, right? That's what it speaks about. Okay. But interestingly enough, they say, the rabbis say that always the nachala, the askara of Yisrael Salanter, always falls out usually in Parashat Mishpatim, because he was the father of the concept of musar, but also how do we treat our peers, our friends. But do you know that when we were speaking about that, one of the conditions and one of the things that we also always have to do is noseh be'olim chavero. What is noseh be'olim chavero? We have to carry the yoke for our friends. We have to help each other. We have to be part of each other. Now, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, in the last chapter, it speaks about the Memchet Kinyanei Torah. There are 48 ways how to acquire the Torah. And one of those, the prerequisites to acquire the Torah is noseh be'olim chavero. To come and to be a part with your friend. And the Chachamim come and they ask, why? I understand some of them there. A person has to be humble. So why do you have to be humble? Because if a person's haughty, he'll never listen. Why? I think I'm always right. So if I don't listen, I won't be able to learn Torah. Or I don't sleep too much. Because if I'm always going to be sleeping, I'm never going to be learning. Or there's a lot of things there. So it makes sense. But what does it have to do that I have to carry the yoke with my friend? What does it have to do with anything? So Kam Chachamim, and they say beautifully, and they say like this, the message behind it really be'emet is, you know what it is? When you want to learn Torah, you have to put yourselves in their shoes. What does that mean? I'm going to learn now Rashi, or I'm going to learn, right, Tosafot, or I'm going to learn something. One of my Rabbanim, Rabbi Green from the yeshiva, always used to tell us, when you're learning what you're learning, you have to put on their jacket, you have to put on their shoes. What does that mean? You have to think like they would think. You have to put yourselves into that situation. And it's actually something beautiful. Rav David Yosef, when he came last time, he spoke about this, that he went and he said, do you know that he was learning a certain halacha on the Yichot Shabbat? It had to do with lighting candles of Shabbat. And he asked, what should you do first? Should you first make the bracha and then light the candles, or light the candles and then make a bracha? Everyone knows Rav Ovadia was very strong. Make the bracha and then you light the candles. He came out of the shiur that the people that do the opposite, they have what to rely on. They have what to rely on. And therefore, it's okay. Yeah? Again, if somebody's going to ask, yeah, okay, he would say like his father. But he said they have what to rely on. Not like Rav Ovadia. He said, no, you have to go, fighting for it like that. He went and he said something incredible. You know what he said? He said, when I'm going to learn a sugya, I come and I see where does my father speak about it. And I write it down. Right, so, okay, he's going to speak about it in the Yabia Omer, Yechavedat, Chazon Ovadia, writes everything down. But purposely he doesn't open it. He doesn't open up to see what he says. He says, you know why? Very simple. He says, but if I'm going to open up to see what he says, I'm already sold to him. And therefore, automatically, I'm going to come out with the exact same decision or conclusion as he does. And that's not Torah. So what do? I first learn it on my own. I first learn everything on my own. Everything. I go through everything. When I finish with everything and I start writing my conclusion, now I open up his Sefarim. And he says there's always things that he's going to add on that I didn't see, that I did see. Perfect. He goes and he adds on very good. And now he sees, why did he get to that conclusion? He said, Baruch Hashem, right? Many times it happened that he always left me a little tiny place that I could still come and say something about it. And he says, that's why I don't always come to the same conclusions. But that's the Torah. Why? The concept of Noseh Be'olin Chavro means I have to feel my friend. Because if you don't know how to feel your friend and to put yourself into a scenario, a situation, you can't learn Torah properly. Because if I'm going to go into halacha already with my decision, it's asur or it's mutar, so then I'll never be able to change. I can't even hear the other side. No matter what you're going to throw at them, it's all the same. You have to go in, I'm part of it. There's nothing. I'm pure. There's nothing. Not on this side, not on that side. I'm completely abstract. I take myself out and there's no bias. Now let's hear. Go one side, the other side, perfect, good, no, and you go back and forth until you get to it. But that's why it's so important. So what happened was, he says, you have to give your entire neshama. Avraham Avinu, he wanted to give his entire neshama. So how do you give your neshama? Learn what your guests like. And you give them what they like, not what you like. Which means that if you know that your guests are going to like beer, buy beer. Don't buy beer because you like beer. Maybe they hate beer. Or maybe it's going to be the opposite, a certain type of wine, or a certain type of meat, or whatever it is. You buy it because what's theirs. That's when you're giving your neshama. Not what you like, because that's when you're not giving. That's what you like, that's in your eyes. But feel what the other one would feel. Feel what they want. That's what it means that you're giving them your heart. You're giving them your attention. You're giving them what they need. That's what you have to actually do. And it's so important, this entire concept, right? And that's why it says we have to be amelim b'Torah. As it says, amelut. Amelut means you become attached to something. Give your heart to learning Torah. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. In essence, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants that it should become ours. In Tehillim, at the beginning, we come and we say, Kim b'Torat Hashem chefzo, uvtorato yegei yomam v'layla. At the beginning, it says, Kim b'Torat Hashem. It's the Torah belongs to Hashem. But then it says, uvtorato, it's your Torah. How does it become? At the beginning, it's Torat Hashem. But when you learn it and you acquire it and it becomes yours, this is what I was coming and doing my amelut, now it's yours. It's not Torat Hashem anymore. It becomes your Torah because you learned it and you actually worked for it. And that's why it's so important that everything that we're going to be doing, right? We have to actually come and we have to understand it's the effort that we have to put into it. It's not the end result. It's not the conclusion. I don't care about the conclusion. If you have a child that he comes and he gives you a 90, and then you have another child that he comes and he gives you an 80, sometimes I would be upset that the child that gave me the 90, not the child that gave me the 80. Why? Because the child that gave me the 90, he does it without any effort. He should usually be getting 100s. So now that he gave you a 90, you're like, what's going on over here? But then the other brother or sister, that they had to work very, very hard to get that 80. You're happy with them because they worked on it. They gave their enthusiasm. They gave their effort. They gave everything that they had into it. Now you're happy with what they have. And that's exactly what Chachamim come and they say. That is the message HaKadosh Baruch Hu always wants to teach us. Rachamana libabai. He wants your heart. We don't care about everything else. He only wants what's inside. That you're giving your full effort. That you're giving everything that you can. That is the secret behind everything that we have in this week's Parasha. Shabbat Shalom.